So welcome to the Synergy Women podcast, and I'm very, very excited to welcome our next guest, who is a resilience and wellbeing expert who has spoken to over 1,000 inspirational people over his time about how to maintain your health and wellbeing through the good times and through the bad. Today he'll pass on his secrets of their success, showing us how we can keep our peace of mind and stay healthy no matter what work or life throws at us. He's a pharmacist turned Australian Comic of the Year, turned award-winning speaker and author of 16 books who believes true success in business and happiness in life comes only when we put ourselves and our well-being first. Today he's going to tell us one simple fact about life that most people refuse to acknowledge, which causes incredible damage to our health. He's going to share with us a catchphrase you can remember to make sure you find the time for your health. He's going to share how to express a health goal that you can actually keep, and also the most underrated way to build your resilience that is also the most fun. So please welcome this week's guest, Marty Wilson. Thanks so much for sharing some time with me today, Marty.
Pleasure, Nicole. Absolute pleasure to be here. I'm intrigued to be here.
Intrigued, yeah, well done. So obviously one of your key interests is in health and wellbeing and building resilience.
Yeah.
And how has your journey sort of navigated you there? What's happened in your journey to navigate you there?
Probably all comes from, as you mentioned in the intro, the What I Wish I Knew book series that I've got out there. I'm not giving it a gratuitous plug. They're almost all out of print these days. I haven't done a new one for about 3 years now. But because for that book series, it's all about, I asked people if you could go back and give your younger self one bit of advice about whatever that book's about, what would it be? And I guess coming from, I'm a third generation pharmacist, married to a nurse whose brother's a GP, so I have like a very strong health and wellbeing background and emphasis. And so half of those books are about health and wellbeing. So health and fitness, cancer, depression, type 2 diabetes, like sort of ones where the format works really well in those types of things that we all go through life completely unaware of a particular sphere of human existence, because we have no real need to. Then all of a sudden we get a diagnosis and we want to find out about that really, really quickly.
Yes.
But most of us don't have like a bank of experts that are surrounding us, and so my books serve as like a little fireside chat.
Oh, that's awesome.
with people who have already been through what you're going through.
That's right. And so I guess often now if we're hit with a diagnosis, we go straight to Google and do our best, but then we get all sorts of random answers through Wikipedia that don't not necessarily or an authentic way of understanding what's the journey actually going to be like from someone who's had experience. So I guess with
the thing, sorry to cut you off, but I think that's a really key part that you mentioned, the journey. Because I think when people go to Google, they want, okay, what can I do in 17 seconds to fix that?
Yeah.
Rather than
I have this life-threatening condition. What can I do in 10 seconds? Yes.
Yeah. And we don't want to go past the first page of results on Google, rather than like spend a few hours having a look through and look for some, at time of recording. We're at the tail end of coronavirus in Australia. The world is very much in it, and I think we've all learnt that the stuff that's on the interwebs, chances are, isn't all true.
No, that's right. You can find anything to support whatever you believe if you type the right question in. Yeah. So those books, I guess, do they then interview lots of people who have had their different journeys, and they all share something? So,
for example, the one on depression, that came from, and I'll talk about the story where it came from later, but I did that in collaboration with the Black Dog Institute, which is Australia's biggest not-for-profit with just zeroing in on depression. And so I got to speak with a dozen experts, a dozen psychologists and psychiatrists, including Gordon Parker, the guy who started it 30 years ago, and about 80 people who had depression and were through it to some degree or another. And that's, like you said, it's a journey when you have depression. It's not, okay, I'm cured now. So I got, in each of those books, I interviewed some people that you would consider to be experts, and also some lay people, I suppose, for want of a better expression, to get that flavour of how it feels like when you first find out, what are some first steps you can take, what's the long-term prognosis look like, and all those types of questions that people really want. So like if they had an uncle and a cousin who had this, how would you have that conversation? That real fireside chat side to it, rather than a strictly medical, this is what happens.
Yeah. So each book then on What I Wish I Knew sort of has a combined professional opinion plus lay people that can kind of put it together in a framework. So What I Wish I Knew, how did that, creating that book series, how did that shape your understanding of well-being and resilience?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, for the book series, like there's all different topics, one on creating wealth, one on motherhood, one on love, so not just about health and well-being, but it's been like writing the book's the boring bit, like it's the interview bits. I'm sure you love doing this podcast. Like it's the interviews that I really love. And so I've got to speak to over 1,000 amazing, like high performing, high achieving / inspirational people out there doing good stuff. People from all over the globe. And when you interview that many people about, basically it's like if you could give your younger self some advice. So it's sort of how to get to your 80th birthday and be sitting there looking back on your time on earth thinking, you know what, I squeezed every last drop out of my time on earth. Like it's how to do life well is basically what it's about. And when you ask that many people that question, some familiar themes start coming up again and again and again. And I would say if I interviewed a round number of 1,000 people, 987 of them said health first. Like look after your health first, like totally unprompted, whether it was about creating wealth, whether it was about love, whether it was about health and fitness. Everyone said like, look after your health. Like nothing means anything if you don't have your health.
Exactly.
And that's not generally how most people live in today's world.
Well, I think we take it for granted. When we have our health, we assume that it's never going to be disrupted. And when it is disrupted, it's like, what? What do you mean? So we just assume that.
Well, that's one of the things I talk about, because you mentioned I speak at corporates, and I in my keynotes I talk about being resilient through times of change, like through times of transition. So like I've been really busy through COVID in terms of that sort of stuff. Sadly, no live stuff, obviously, but that's what it's like, it's almost like we're indignant that things have changed. Like it's just, I didn't see that coming. And one of the things I talk about in my keynotes is like, you have to accept that there will be tough times. Like accept between now and your final days on earth, you are going to have some really shitty days. And not begrudgingly tolerate them when they arrive. Like to say, okay, that's where I'm at now. Okay, how am I going to get through that? And I think one of the good things about COVID has actually been, because normally, particularly in the workplace, we've all got stuff going on at home. Like everyone has a home life. Like one of the things I say in my live keynote is like, hands up anyone in the room who doesn't have any total dickheads in their extended family. And never a hand goes up. There's never anyone
looking around.
Alcoholic Uncle John, or
black sheep somewhere.
Everyone has someone who's causing a ruckus in their family. But with COVID, we've normally got to come to work and put on the game face and not really bring that to work. But with COVID, we're all going through it at the same time.
That's right.
And so, I know it has been hard for some people's mental health, but at least we can all talk about our biggest concern to everyone.
Together,
And that's a really healthy thing.
Yeah, it is. Because often it is, like you say, if you are navigating a challenge at home that's not familiar to everyone else, you feel quite isolated, you're kind of running around trying to organise it yourself and try to put on a brave face for work. But at least during COVID, everyone's experiencing similar difficulties, not necessarily exactly the same difficulties, but similar difficulties, so we can all have a shared experience in that.
I know, in your workplace, you see a lot of different people every day, and I guarantee you can bond with anyone talking about isolation, homeschooling, all those things that we're all going through. It's instant rapport.
That's right.
When you talk to people about those sort of things.
That's right. So if you interviewed lots of those sort of inspiring people to develop the books, What I Wish I Knew, the key familiar topics that came up again and again were basically looking after your health as a primary step. Anything else that sort of came up as a common thing?
That's in your introduction you talked about, and I find that the one key fact that I think most people refuse to understand rather than don't get, I think deep down everyone does get, and this is what I talk about in my corporate stuff, is that life is change.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying like, oh, isn't life full of change? Isn't
Yeah,
change such a big part of life?
Sometimes
no, life
it's a slap in the face.
is change. The Buddhists call it impermanence. It's only us in the West that call like, oh, here we go again. Look
I can't cope. I'm changing.
And I hold up I facetiously raise my hand and say, okay, hold your hand up. Who wants life? Put your hand up if you want life.
Yeah, of course.
So then you have to accept this. And I hold a slide of the Oxford English Dictionary definition of the word life, which is the condition that distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter, including the capacity for growth, reproduction, functional activity, and continual change preceding death.
Yes.
So it's like continual change till the day you die.
Yes, yes.
And I think so many people have this idea that using all the tricks of everything from modern plastic surgery through to fad diets, they can fool life and get out of the fact that life is change. And I'm not casting nasturtiums at plastic surgery.
No.
It's more just like, don't kid yourself. Eventually the effects of all those things are going to run out, and you are going to get older. Things about you are going to be different. And working on accepting that in a healthy way is a far better long-term strategy than I just want to look good for that party next week.
Yeah.
Or I want to make sure I fit into my bikini or my, my trendy new boardies that I've got or something like that. Just that the idea that you can fight change. And I know how, psychologists say it's deeply rooted in our natural fear of death and all that sort of thing. But it sort of ties in with the first thing I said about accepting there will be tough times. You have to accept deep in your heart that things are going to be different. You're going to have everyone's going to have some illness between now and the time they die. Everyone's going to have financial hardship, relationship breakdown, unexpected illness in your family. Everyone has that. And so you've got to accept that, and then you can concentrate on the stuff that really matters, like getting your health from 3 to 9.5 rather than -7 back up to 2, where you can just function, if that makes sense.
Do you think there's a way to help people accept that there's change coming in their lives, or there will be change? Because even though it's easy to say, oh, we should accept that there will be change. And kind of academically in your brain, you think, yes, I'll accept there's a change. But still, when changes and difficulties arrive in your life, there's still this kind of like, what?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you think there's a way that people can help develop their skills in acceptance, which I guess is in a way developing resilience to adapt to change? Do you think there's some key things there that help people do that?
I mean, partly is just awareness of it, and awareness in a more gentle way, which is why I deliberately, in my What I Wish I Knew books, I make them very much like a fireside chat rather than, a finger pointing. A lot of quote unquote motivational, inspirational books are very finger pointy, do it this way or you're just an idiot. And I show, because people give advice to their younger selves, in the books I have a photo of that person when they were 18.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
So that it takes all the smugness out of the advice they give when they're wearing paisley flares and a brutal mullet and things like that.
I was dressed as Madonna back then, so
there's a great photo of George Michael.
I can see that.
With the tips and the little cross earring.
Yeah, nice.
Acid wash jeans, all that sort of stuff. So there is when you look around you, and I strongly encourage people to dive into the library of talking books that we all have around us. I see my What I Wish I Knew books as a metaphor for the fact that if we just drop our defences and ask for help, then there's people who are, depending on what sphere of life you're talking about, whether it's, finances, health, relationships, it doesn't matter what part of life you're having problems with. There's people who are ahead of you in that area and then behind you in other areas. So drop your... the sort of genesis for the What I Wish I Knew books came to me when I was... when we had Ali and I, we had our first child over in the UK, and I was walking around London with Kingston upon Thames, for those who know it listening, with one of those baby Bjorn things. Just walking around giving Ali a bit of a break.
Yeah.
And walked into Marks and Spencer, and this beautiful little old lady sitting behind the till in Marks and Spencer looked me up and down, must have picked me as a new dad in one, and just said, "You look tired." Like she had this voice.
Thanks, that's the look I was aiming for.
But she just had this voice, like imagine like a West Indian James Earl Jones, like Mufasa from Lion King or something like that, just coming out of this little old lady. And it was like she just flicked this wind switch on the back of my head. It was like, "Oh, I have no idea. He's not sleeping, I'm not sleeping, the wife's not sleeping." And then this lady was just grinning at me, folded her arms, grinning at me, just going, and I wasn't stopping her. Like, 150 books, he's nothing like the freaking books, I'll tell you that.
She's opened the floodgates.
Yeah. In the end, she just held up a hand like this and just said, "You wait till he crashes your car."
Right. And brings it into perspective.
Yeah,
okay.
And so that moment, it's like, because we all walk through life trying to kid ourselves that we've got life sorted. Like, particularly us blokes.
Women do it too.
Yeah. I don't need your help. I've got life sorted. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm fine. Or I know the emphasis of this being on women in the workplace, and sort of particularly women balancing mother. So I did that book on motherhood. Women, when they have a new baby, feeling the need to convince the world that it's all going swimmingly. Or just that I'm balancing things. I'm the woman who can do everything. All that sort of stuff. But I was so tired. My defences were down, and this lovely woman just picked me up and just mentored the bejesus out of me. And that made me realise that thing I was saying, that it doesn't matter what part of life, if you just look around you and keep your eyes open for people who are ahead of you in that sphere, drop your defences and ask those people for help. Because they hand over the keys, like success leaves clues. There's schoolboy errors, schoolgirl errors that everyone makes if they haven't bothered. Because, 300 years ago, your mum would hand down to you tips about that sort of stuff. Yes. But now we've all moved away, or your dad would hand tips to you, or family members. We'd all live in a group, and the wisdom is the oral wisdom is passed down, and that's just not anymore.
So I guess it's really about understanding that change will happen. It's inevitable. So if you have a baby and think it's going to be an amazing experience, it will be, but you'll also be tired, and there'll be changes around your own health with that. So accepting change, but then also being able to drop your defences and maybe be a bit authentic. And I think that helps with resilience is that developing authenticity to say, do you know what, I'm actually struggling with this. Who out there knows something that might be able to help me take a step forward to where I want to be? And part of that is allowing yourself to be a bit vulnerable. Is that right?
Yeah. And leaving those horrible shoulds behind. Like
I should be this amazing woman that goes to the gym and juggles motherhood and a business and has a perfectly clean house and all of those things together. So all of the shoulds. So the familiar themes that come up when you're talking with people in What I Wish I Knew were really, looking after your health as a first step, being able to look around at other people as a kind of a beacon of light to be able to help you move forward if someone's ahead of you in time, and then being authentic and being able to ask for help if you need to. And
the other thing that you mentioned in your introduction, particularly with respect to health and well-being, is when I did my type 2 diabetes book, I did that with Diabetes Australia, and I got to speak to this guy called Dave Guyot, and Dave, when he left school, he was 76 kilos, and he became a truck driver out of school, and 5 years out of school, he was 156 kilos.
Oh my goodness.
So he was almost double his weight from school. And he was driving along one day, and all the colour went from his vision. His vision just went all black and white. And I'm no optometrist, but that's not a good sign.
No, it doesn't sound very good.
And he drove straight to the doctor, and the doctor had a look at him, did some tests and everything, and he just sort of went, about 6 months. And Dave said, what, like 6 months will be gone? He said, no, you've got about 6 months unless you change your life.
Yeah.
And so he went home, he said, I got the wheelie bin inside, dragged my whole pantry into the wheelie bin.
Good plan.
And then just started again. And then 3 years after that, he was down to, he lost all the weight that he had from school, and he was down to his school weight. But the quote to his younger self was, and this is the quote that I say, like, because so many of us say, yes, I must get healthy. I must lose those 5 kilos. I must move more, and all that sort of thing. Dave says, find time for health now, or soon you will be finding time for illness.
Yes.
And so it's that thing of, I'm sure you get a lot of people come and see you about, all of a sudden my back's just gone. Well, so what have you been doing for the last 10 years? Sitting in an office. Do it.
Of course it's going to hurt.
So it's like health and well-being takes time, and it takes effort.
Yes.
But if I say to you, okay, come along and see me 3 times a week for 30 minutes at these times, and you go, I haven't got time for that. I'm so busy, mate. Yeah. If you had a cancer diagnosis, if you lost your kidneys and you were on dialysis, you'd find the time.
Yeah, the time.
And it's like, why not find the time now for a bit of health and fitness, rather than, because eventually, I love the way Dave uses the word will. Eventually, you will be finding time for illness.
Yes.
So why not do it when it adds, everything, movement from, sadly, my dad's falling prey to the Alzheimer's and that sort of stuff. Like, it, health and well-being prolongs any chance of dementia you have coming in. Mental health. I interviewed, remember Jane Fleming? She was an Olympic runner. I loved her quote. She says, I run for vanity, but mainly I run for sanity.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely that, so why not put the effort in now? Because you're going to have to in 10 years if you don't, or 2 years, or, and don't tell me you're surprised when all of a sudden the cosmic 2x4 hits you on the back of the head, and you've got to work really hard to get back up to 0 rather than getting from 3 to 9.5, like we were saying.
And what do you think, what are the reasons that people don't find time, do you think? Because I hear that a lot, and a lot of health professionals do, and as a physiotherapist, so I don't have time for exercise, or I haven't had time to go to the supermarket and get a decent, high quality diet, or I haven't had time. What is it for you, do you think, that comes up that prevents people spending time on their health? I
think you touched on it at the start. I think until we've had our first dose of reality. serious, and sometimes that can be in our immediate sphere. Like I interviewed a guy, Jim Hunter, for my book on love, and he talked about sadly his wife passed away from cancer, and he just completely changed the way he was living his life. And when he ended up running a charity and did all sorts of things, and he said, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have that realisation without living through the tragedy first? And I think, the whole premise of my books is faulty in that people are going to take this advice until they've had the cosmic 2x4.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think
sometimes it takes that shove, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, because and I guess it's like in the workplace, when I talk to people, the change is always really sudden. When all of a sudden people are saying, "Oh my goodness, why has everything changed in my workplace?" Where at home, in our personal lives, the changes are always really slow.
Gradual.
Really slow. And so when something big happens out of the blue, that is a real shock. And people are like, oh,
actually,
hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Because so I can't, we've got some tips we can talk about once you've really committed to something, how you can stick to it. But I haven't found the magic recipe to really get people to commit to it until they've had that cosmic 2x4 in some way.
So sometimes you need that kind of smack in the face to go, hang on a minute, my health is not something that just is automatically taken for granted. It's something that I might need to do a little bit of work for.
Like I'm really very lucky. The old quote, I come from good stock. My grandparents on my dad's side, I look a lot like my dad. I'm obviously a Wilson. They lived like 96 and 92, and dad's 80, mum's 76, and they're both, dad's brain his body's still very healthy. Yes. And so I come from good stock, and that's been me in the last couple of years. just the niggles are starting to come in the body, like playing too much rugby when I was young, it's having effect on the shoulder, and just a bit of...
It's all coming back at you. And I guess, I mean, and I think about this as well with some of the work that I've done in the Rise Up method is in helping women's resilience. We really, as a base for health, we really need to look after our mind health, our body health and our heart health, just as a base to be able to navigate changes and challenges that come our way. And often it is the change and challenge that makes you realise, actually, if I don't have this base of health, like with my nutrition, with my sleep, with my exercise, these basic things, they're not hard things. And it is a shame that for some reason we don't seem to make the time until something challenging happens or comes our way.
Well, that's one of the things I do draw out when I do work with corporates. I ask them to go back and look over their lives and say, when was there a time when you thought your whole world was caving in, but it actually ended up either just showing you how tough a cookie you really are, or even became the making of you.
Yes.
And I would say 75 to 85% of people in the room have had some, heart-stopping moment where they thought they were going over here and all going one way. Then all of a sudden, 180 degrees, life takes a serious turn on them. But when they look back on it, sometimes some really tragic things happen to people, and you can't say, "Oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me." But I interviewed a lady. Ingrid Paulson for my book on love, and she was estranged from her husband, and he came round one night and raped her. And the next day she was off at she was on Australia Story and everything, and the next day she was off at the police reporting that he'd broken his AVO, and he came round to her house and killed the 2 kids and her dad.
Oh my God.
And so she came home to that. And she says, look, obviously I'm not glad it happened. No. She's since remarried and everything. But she said, look, I'm obviously not glad it happened. But I love the way she described it. She said, I have this white hot diamond in my chest that I know the worst thing that will ever happen to me in my life has already happened.
Yes.
And that gives me so much resilience and bravery, and it's weird to say it, but inner peace.
Yeah.
Because I got through that and I built myself back up from that, because she was pretty low after that.
My God,
as you could imagine.
I don't think many people would recover from that necessarily, and she's obviously been able to...
And she talked about, because sadly her brother ended his life when they were both young. Yeah. And she drank herself into oblivion for about 4 years.
Yeah,
so she learnt from that that
doesn't help.
No, that doesn't help. And so, on a much smaller scale, I ask people to share in my workshops and things like that, things that have happened to them. And there's some really lovely stories about, people, I thought the rug was pulled on me, someone left me, or, personal tragedy or that sort of thing. But, by honouring that person's memory, or people turning that into a good thing, has been an enormously positive, pivotal moment in their lives.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so basically, if there's any women listening at the moment that are going through a challenge where you're at the bottom of the ocean and thinking things are just not going to plan, my life script is not what I thought it was going to be, know that there are many women that have navigated amazing challenges and somehow over a period of time have been able to navigate and turn that around. And like that example of having the diamond inside, I love that example. It almost, like, I believe going through a challenge can almost polish that inner diamond and go, do you know what, I can get rid of this crap, I can get rid of that. Take a deep breath, this is where I am, this is what I represent, this is how I'm going to shine out, and then get clear on what's actually important. And I think that's a beautiful thing that can come out of a life challenge. But
so one of the things I would anyone listening to this, firstly, if that was triggering what I just talked about, please
of course,
Lifeline. There's some great places. Please reach out for help. But also, the reason I get people to look back on their life is what worked for you last time, what helped last time. Look back on that incident or those incidents. You know, what did you do? Like Ingrid Paulson said, she drank herself silly for a while. Like she knew that didn't work.
No.
So like what didn't work and what did work. So like what strategies did you stumble into or get advice about that helped you get through some dramatic change and help you be more resilient last time?
Yes.
And actively seek those this time.
Yes. So part of it's reviewing your own life and knowing what's worked for you, but then also, I guess, exploring something like What I Wish I Knew in your books gives you stories and anecdotes from other people of like, well, this is what worked for me in this particular circumstance.
And that sort of, the idea of doing that came from Ali, my wife, who, you know, is a nurse.
Yeah.
And after any major incident, they do a debrief with everyone involved, and they talk about how we're going to manage that going forward. And
that's great.
get a new set of procedures
Yes.
for when that happens next time.
Yes.
And that's just a lovely way to look at any tough time you go through.
Yes.
Do a debrief with everyone involved and say, right, when that happens next time, what can we do to handle that better?
Yes, and that's exactly what I do in my own business at Synergy Physio. If anything goes wrong in the business with procedures or anything, we basically then go, okay, error has happened, how do we restructure this and make a new procedure to kind of mean that next time this happens, we've got a better policy or a better procedure or a better way of navigating this particular problem. And I guess that's applicable in business, applicable in finances, but applicable in your health, your relationships, and kind of anything that you're navigating. And so if you're thinking about, just say someone listening to this is thinking, right, well, I've got to get my health on track, because ultimately that forms the base of resilience. And if it's the most common thing that comes up after speaking to thousands of inspirational people, if that's the one thing that comes up in What I Wish I Knew from childhood, I wish I'd looked after my health a little bit more. If that's the one thing, what is it that can help us stick to our goals, do you think? Because it's, you know, I see this on News Day resolutions, right? We all have this, right, I am going to eat better, lose 5 kilos, run every day, do yoga classes 3 times a week, and you write your list.
Yep.
How is it that we can make these goals stick, do you think?
First of all, I'd say investigate the science of setting goals. Like there's loads of really good books out there. There's one called Succeed by a lady called Heidi Grant Halverson. She's just done a massive meta study in how people achieve the goals they set out for themselves to achieve, whatever that goal is. But the one that I thought I'd talk about today is be incredibly specific. And so there was a study called The Christmas Letter that a guy did about 20 years ago now, where he said to students that I want you to write me a letter on Boxing Day how your family spends Christmas Day. Just one page. Just write me a letter and post it off. And they'll only count towards 5% of your mark, so it's possibly not that important. And he gave them this assignment as they left their final exams for the year. Half of the class, he said, I want you to tell me right now when and where you're going to write me that letter. Tell me exactly when and where you're going to be really specific about when and where you're going to write that letter. And so one person said, okay, I'll be at mum and dad's house. I'll go in the den at 10:30 and I'll get it done. Punch it out. The people who the half of the class who we asked to do it were twice as likely to do that exercise.
Yeah, right.
Now, I'm sure, someone who's done a lot of research in this, I'm sure, about having a statistical result as something being twice as likely in a goal.
That's a huge...
is massive, absolutely massive. And there have been a lot of studies following on after that. So don't just say on your New Year's resolution, got to get moving.
Yeah.
I've got to lose some weight.
Step 1, lose weight. Step 2, move. Great, got it.
So like, and even just saying it out loud, what do you think you're more likely to do? Follow up with, I've got to get moving, or every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, I'm going to meet Nicole at her place. We're going to walk at 5 a.m.
Yes.
We're going to work all the way around the springs.
Okay. I'm more kind of 6 o'clock in the morning.
7:30 a.m. We're going to walk all the way around Peregian Springs, around the avenue, map out the roads, and then we're both going to go home and start our work days.
Great.
It's just self-evident.
Yeah.
When you say that, you go, oh yeah.
That's actually a really good tip. Yeah, that's something that I have not done. I've often written down goals and then broken it down as to what I want to do. But as far as if I think in my past history of resolutions around my health, his has always been, I need to run more, or I need to do a bit more yoga, or I need to, I don't know. And they all seem a bit vague, my goals. So being a bit more specific. I will run on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the morning, not at 5. Thank you.
And it's that, they call it implementation planning, or like if-then thinking. And so the way our brains work, if you say, like, instead of saying, I really should talk to my 9-year-old Charlie, who's been diagnosed with ADHD about 3-4 months ago, and we found that just connecting with him more, he feels more settled, and family life is more settled. And so if I say, I really should connect with Charlie more, it's just not going to happen. If I say, every night at bedtime, we call it our little chat.
Yes.
When he goes to bed, I go in, so whatever time Charlie goes to bed, I go in and I spend 5 minutes talking to him to say, what went well today, all those things, just recapping the day. And then we have a cuddle and say, I love you. And so when Charlie's going to bed, my mind goes, I've got to chat to him.
Yeah.
Or it's like, if you say, instead of saying, I need to call my mum more, or we say, I'm going to call my mum at 6 p.m. on Sunday night. 6 p.m. Sunday night, your brain goes, that's right, I'm calling mum.
It's a trigger, yeah. And I talk about that, I've talked about that in the past with healthy habits, is that like when we brush our teeth, we know after breakfast we brush our teeth, and after dinner and we've just had that trigger, and we don't even need, doesn't even take up brain space now to brush your teeth. You don't have to think, what have I got to do next? What is it? Hang on a minute. Your mind space is free of that decision and that action that helps with your teeth health, because you've just formulated a trigger that then starts to become this rolling momentum.
And that's exactly right. And I think one of the key things about people not following up their health plans is what Professor Roy Baumeister calls decision fatigue. So, like, that's maybe one quick tip we can say. If you want to do any exercise at all, anything that requires you to make a decision to consciously give effort to anything that's going to make you better at anything, like whether it be practicing violin or doing health, do it in the morning.
Yes.
Because you have more neurotransmitters left in your brain that are involved in decision making.
Oh, that's good.
If you come home from work where you've had to make decisions all day, or you've even been looking after kids, you've done dinner, and they're like, no, please, even that decision to manage your emotions and not go, for Christ's sake, just making decisions, at the end of the day, you are far less likely to exert conscious effort to do something that feels a bit hard. And so do it in the morning, and be really specific about what mornings you're going to do it.
You've got a finite amount of decision-making capacity and willpower throughout the day, and it kind of peters off toward the end of the day, meaning at the end of the day you've got not much left. And you're more likely to sit on the couch.
Roy Baumeister says, willpower really is like a muscle, it tires if you use it, and you can build it up.
Yes. So I guess helping build up that motivation and willpower is a good thing, but knowing that in the mornings you're better off making those decisions early and getting it done, and then that way when you are running low at the end of the day, you're not then trying to look after your health as a last minute afterthought rather than a priority.
And you come in and your husband or wife hands you, do you want a glass of wine? I'm having a glass of wine. I've got to turn around and go to the gym, darling.
Exactly. Shiraz or the gym. At 7 o'clock at night, I know where my thoughts would be going. So I guess the next question that I wanted to ask you is about a couple of ways you think are important to boost resilience.
And the best thing is they're both fun. The first one is hang around with people. Human beings are very, very social animals. And my wife had crippling postnatal depression after all 3 of our kids. That's where the depression book came from. They're like, one time I came home from work and Ali just, about 8 months after the birth of our third boy, Charlie, just burst into tears over the dinner table and just quietly slid across the table to me the goodbye letters that she'd written to myself and all 3 of our boys. And again, my apologies for anyone who's listening to this who finds this triggering. Please reach out and get some help. But there were some pretty brutal conversations that happened that night. And in the time after that, I asked her, and I'd learnt that this was a good thing to ask when someone is struggling from depression. Don't ask how you can make it better.
No.
Say, is there anything I can do that won't make it worse?
Yeah.
And she said two things. The first thing was we don't hang around with people anymore. Like we've stopped mixing with people. And because she'd stopped wanting to.
Yeah.
And so she sort of quietly just said, look, just drag me out. Once I'm there,
I'm actually okay.
I'll know I'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I started to do that. And on the way home, she'd say, thanks very much, that was really great. I would never have gone to that barbecue or whatever, but it was really great.
A bit like push starting a car. It's like someone's got to help you to get over the line a little bit and then you're rolling.
And human beings, isolation, that's why COVID has been so tough for some people. Isolation is just the worst thing. When you're feeling under the pump, when you're going through something big.
Yeah, and I can say, and even from my own experience, I can say that most of the time, women and men, if you're going through a challenge, whether it's a mental health challenge or a financial challenge or a challenge at work or a challenge with relationships or family, whatever it is, it's a really common experience, I think, to actually want to isolate yourself. Like a lot of people do just close the door and go inwards in an attempt to cope, but often it's not necessarily the best thing to do.
No, I mean, us blokes are bad at it, and women are bad at it too, and if you're listening to this and the person you love is doing that, then reach out to their friends and get them to reach in and that sort of stuff. And just a bit of, my friend, I love you exactly as you are.
Exactly.
It's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I've been where you are. I'm feeling okay now. Let's just get people around you or get people around them if you have someone who's really struggling. And the other thing that Ali said, which from my background I absolutely love, she said, we don't laugh anymore. She said, because back when I was a stand-up comic, she'd come along with me for the weekend and we'd go and see live comedy all the time. We'd schedule time to watch our favourite shows like QI and Graham Norton and those sort of things. And we just stopped. And there's massive bank of research into how laughing at your problems is good for your resilience.
Yes.
Like it helps reduce threats and reduce stress and reappraise threats.
Yes.
So it's like it flicks a switch in the back of your head that says to your brain, well, if I can laugh at this, I must be bigger than it.
Yes.
I must have control over this to some degree if I can take the piss out of it.
Yeah.
And that, helps you, build up resilience, helps you, what they call, what's the psychological term for it? Positive affect. It gives you positive affect, which is just cheerful.
Yes.
And so being able to deliberately go, and if you can't laugh at your problems yet, find ways to just laugh at stuff.
Yes.
Like COVID's been pretty tough, but humanity's response to COVID has at times been freaking hilarious.
It has been. Some of the YouTube things that have come out, some of the comedians, it's actually been really, really, some of it's been amazing.
Yeah. It's just honestly, if you're listening to this, Google funny homemade masks people have worn, and there's like people on public transport with those big water bottles that workplaces have over their head, and and like this one guy was walking through a supermarket, he had like a fennel bulb over his face, and this one guy had like a what they call Union Jack pair of undies over his face. And
I've got nothing to entertain me, so I'll just put a Union Jack pair of undies on my face. Yes, create my own
let alone like just search for best Zoom fails if you're struggling with like being stuck at home and everything. There's so much stuff. Honestly, just any time you're struggling with an issue, Google search, just like when my boys were quite into the Asia soccer, was it the Asian Cup? Because we won it in 2014, and in 2018 they were a bit upset because we got knocked out quite early. So we just bounced around the internet and just searched for like soccer fails, worst soccer mistakes and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever you're struggling with, just search for funny X videos on Google.
Yeah.
And I promise, and Ali said, she was still depressed.
Of course.
But she said the clouds just started to lift just enough for her to start getting a bit of exercise, getting out in the sun.
To get the ball rolling.
Doing those things that she knew would add up to better health and well-being, just didn't quite have the energy to get to.
Yes.
So getting around with friends, and that goes hand in hand with laughing at problems and that sort of stuff, because we naturally laugh more when we're with other people.
That's it. And I have to laugh now because my husband routinely starts his day by watching a fail video, and I've always just like, why are you doing this? You're sitting there with your coffee watching fail videos, but that's how he starts his day.
Yeah.
So there's logic to what I perceived was his madness. It's actually a good thing for your resilience.
Yeah, well, that book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
The quote I love from that is, nothing in the human makeup is more able to humour more than anything else in the human makeup. It gives the ability to rise above any situation, even just for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And this is a psychologist, so a very learned man in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany.
Which is not a humorous situation really at all.
Saying those around him that still managed to laugh were more likely to have survived.
Yeah.
And so they got through their troubles. Now, it was also about finding their why and all that sort of stuff. But just in terms of if I just think, if he can laugh in the middle of that, I don't care what's happening in my life.
Yes.
I can deliberately try at least to get to have a giggle.
Get out and have a giggle. Exactly. All right. So to kind of summarise for today, if you were to give women sort of 3 key tips to help, given that you've spoken to so many people on health and well-being and their experiences and what they'd share with their younger selves, 3 key tips for women to help boost their resilience and boost their capacity to look after themselves as far as their health and well-being is concerned. What do you think those 3 key things would be for you, if you'd like to share?
Sure. I'd say that golden rule of life is change. So things will decline and other things will raise. This isn't, you aren't where you are now forever. You have to accept that, parts of us slide south but parts of us grow and develop at the same time. So life is change. The second part of it is health and well-being takes effort. When you're young, you can just coast through, but if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you've reached the point where it's going to take some effort. So find time to look after yourself now, or you'll be finding time for illness later. And the last one is that double-barreled thing of, when things are going bad, deliberately make that effort to hang around with your friends and deliberately choose to laugh at your problems. Find a way to laugh at your problems.
Yes, I like that. Thank you so much. It's really great to talk to you today. Where can listeners find out a bit more about you?
If you're listening to this, and I guess if your workplace is going through a whole heap of change and you'd like someone to come along and help the people cope with that, my website is martinwilson.com. So that's where all my keynote speaking and that sort of stuff is.
And can they find out information about your books on your website as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks so much for joining me. Thanks everybody for listening to the Synergy Women podcast.